Welcome to the 43rd episode of the GameFor podcast. In this episode, still recording from home and sponsored by Gaddis Gaming, we will talk about guilty pleasures in tabletop gaming. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And we are part of GameFor. GameFor is this podcast is about getting people together, and obviously we kind of can't really do that right now. The app that this podcast is named after, GameFor, also about getting tabletop gamers together. And currently in the pandemic, it's still kind of a difficult thing to do, but we're going forward with the podcast for now, as the app is hibernating and waiting for things to get better so we can get back to actual face-to-face tabletop gaming. And while we're waiting, the podcast is going to help us to hopefully help you get more enjoyment out of your gaming hobby, your tabletop gaming hobby, as we all can, while we kind of wait for things to get better. And while we're waiting for things to get better, what kind of stuff have you been working on in your hobby, Matt?
I am still trying to assemble the Blood Bowl team, my first Blood Bowl team. Definitely one of the harder ones to assemble. Like, I don't know what it is. There's some pieces that fit really well together, and some pieces that I'm just aggravated with and can't seem to make work. But I've used a lot of accelerator and stuff like that, so I've been starting to use a lot of tricks that I've been learning and to put it together. So I'm hoping that will work itself out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's about all I've been doing game wise. I've kind of been distracted. I've been coaching my daughter's basketball team, and we just had our last game last night. So now I'm freed up from that, and football season's nearly done. So my mom and I usually watch like the Packers game together every week. So
I thought you were coaching football as well.
No coaching football. But yeah, that's done. Hockey is still in full swing for my youngest, and then basketball's almost done with my other son. So it's been weird with the pandemic because there's only so many people allowed to watch and the masks and everything, but they've been actually able to mostly have successful seasons and play safely. So that's been good. And then I've been spending a lot of time modifying and playing my new pinball machine. Modifying, like adding like different lights and little trinkets and pieces to help with playing less with the play field and more just kind of aesthetic stuff. So
that kind of sounds like it's another hobby beyond, you
Yeah.
just got pinball playing, but then also pinball machine ownership and husbandry and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
So because I needed another hobby.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I have had one order come in this last week that I've been printing up. 3 of the models printed up fantastic the first time, and then the last one made me start to rethink the whole, like, it's practically press print and you're done for resin printing.
Sure.
This one's just been a difficult one. The model maker did a nice job of trying to provide supports, but for whatever reason, like one of the hands just did not want to print. So I think it took me 3 or 4 tries before I finally got it. Like the third try, I got the hand to work nice, but then realized that the thumb that was curling underneath was missing. So I had to kind of redo that and print that. So yeah, it took some work, but it was victorious last night. So I was really happy about that.
And so you're thinking it was the actual shape itself that was causing trouble? It wasn't anything else necessarily?
Yeah, it was.
The other prints all worked well.
Yeah, it worked out fine, and yeah, the printer itself was fine. It was this one was just it was up in the air, and the way it was curled made it very hard to have the supports, and it was very thin because it had like long claws on it. So getting that so that it was balanced on the supports at the right time without wobbling or getting pushed off before the other supports had time to kind of grab onto it and kind of pull it up is kind of the trick. And you're also trying to balance that with how fast you're printing and stuff like that. So I had to slow it down a little bit, and yeah, just kind of some tweaks to make it work. The nice thing is I can save like the modifications I did for that. I have it. I was like I call it like
profile.
Like a difficult print profile. So if something doesn't print under the normal one, I usually try that because it takes about twice as long to print, but I usually have way more success with that. So it's, you know, and luckily that doesn't use a ton of resin usually when I figure out that there's been issues, but
Yeah.
I figured it out. So
Is there? Would you say there's more things to adjust on? I mean, are there which system has more adjustment? Like
oh, by far
resin
the
or
filament.
filaments got
The
more adjustment?
Oh yeah, by far. Because
Yeah,
you
yeah.
got belts and stuff to time in there, and your leveling is a lot more difficult. On the
Hmm.
resin one, you basically just take a piece of paper, lay it down on the screen area, loosen up the screws, lay it flat against that piece of paper or whatever the right distance from that is,
Hmm.
and then retighten it, balanced at that level, and you're done. Versus having to like take either do
Well,
multiple
you got
screws and
yeah, you've
adjust
got
and
usually a screw on every corner, and then there's like
and you're trying
spring
to
tension,
adjust
and
and
mhm,
yeah.
yeah. Well,
Uh,
that's interesting. I'm still sort of sometimes thinking about resin printing, but I'm still concerned, at least around here, because I wouldn't be able to like store it any place like out in the garage because it would freeze in the winter and stuff like that. So I'm still thinking about maybe when there's some more better bio resins and water washable resins and things like that, and whatnot.
yeah,
You know.
I think the new ones with their carbon filters and the paired with the water washable,
Hmm.
there's not really a smell to
Okay.
it
Yeah.
anymore. Like it's pretty tolerable. Like we have it in our house in our basement, and it's
Hmm.
kind of in an area that has enough traffic that if it was, people would know.
Sure.
I would have
Sure.
heard about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Okay.
but
Well, I'm
maybe my kids
still
will have
thinking
three
about it.
arms. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I don't need you. Nobody needs that. You'd have to just buy more gloves, and that's a bummer.
It would
It's
help
not
putting
saving you money.
miniatures, your Blood Bowl teams together better.
Well, I mean, you're not saying those extra arms are going to be good usable arms. They just might be
Okay, that's
extra.
true.
You know,
That's
yeah.
true.
I mean, if they're usable, that's awesome. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So, so
um,
that's me. How about you?
yeah. I've been working on. Let's see. So I'm currently working on Adeptus Mechanicus infiltrators, who are kind of tall, spindly, skinny robot guys.
Mm,
For Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team, which is a game that I enjoy, and we'll mention a little bit later on. But it is I'm doing that on Twitch, so that's the project I've been working on the last several
mm.
episodes on Twitch. I usually do 2 times a week on Twitch, Mondays and Fridays, and so yeah, I was last night. I continued along, and discovered that whoever had put these models together, because I bought them pre-built, I found them at like a swap meet kind of a thing, and whoever put them together just for no reason added like kind of like leg pouches to one of the models for no reason. Like the kit that can be built is
Mhm.
either what's known as either rust stalkers or infiltrators, and there's little parts you change, but they both have kind of the same overall tall skinny sort of thing going on.
Okay.
And this person built them as infiltrators, except that one of them he put rust stalker pouches on it. And it's sort of like, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to paint all these pouches. And all of a sudden I realized that I looked
Mm.
at the other 4 models. I'm like, well, none of the rest of them have pouches. That's weird. And then somebody in the chat's like, yeah, I'm looking at the website. The pouches are actually supposed to be on the rust stalkers, not on the infiltrators. And so this person, so I'm like, oh. And then I was like, well,
Uh,
why did I do that? And I had forgotten that I had bought them pre-built. I'm like, oh, that's why I didn't do it. Somebody else did. So anyway, but that's not that big of a deal. We'll just decide that guy's just got a lot of snacks with him for some reason, and
he was more handy and
yeah, very prepared is what it was. So yeah, but that's in process, and hopefully I've got, I don't know, maybe another couple of episodes out of that, and then they'll be done. But then I have some more Adeptus Mechanicus guys who are not quite as tall and skinny, but they'll be following directly afterwards. So I'll be working on them as well, and that'll be
nice.
fun. Um, Otherwise, in my not Twitch streaming stuff, I am kit bashing some zombies together for Zona Alpha.
Okay.
Zona Alpha is I think a very cool skirmish kind of game, and it's kind of a modern day, but it's not like historical modern. It's not like actual military versus actual military. It's got there's aliens came and landed on the planet, and then they left a bunch of junk behind, and now the game is about basically being kind of a treasure hunter to go into these exclusion zones to try to get some cool alien tech. And but there's also weird horrible anomalies and things like that, and sometimes feral dogs and sometimes zombies because they got goofed up by whatever alien technology and other zombies. So I'm using mantic ghouls,
Okay.
which are from their fantasy game, which is called Kings of War. And then I
Mm.
am kit bashing them to give them like military helmets. So they're very kind of emaciated and have just tattered rags on them. But when I paint them, the tattered rags will all be like military colors, and they're going to have some military
Okay.
helmets and stuff like that. So
Cool.
they're kind of like almost like, because it kind of makes sense. Like my plan for the overall kind of like look and feel of the board that I'm going to build for this is going to
Mhm.
be like this happened either in an industrial area or potentially even maybe sort of near a military base, but probably a little bit more industrial. I actually picked up I ordered late last year, I ordered some terrain, some laser cut MDF terrain from a company called Black Site Studios. And they
Mhm.
are basically like, kind of like cinder block walls that have started to kind of fall down, and you put these things
Mm.
together. So I bought they you get 4 walls in each set. I bought 3 sets, and so I built 4 of them this weekend, and they're already pre-colored. Like the
Oh,
MDF is
cool.
not like MDF colored. Like I think you saw it. They're the company that had the huge oil tanker.
The oil ticket. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, their stuff is so
That,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, we saw it at Adepticon back 2 years ago, 2019, and they
Yeah,
have a
so
bunch
they
of
kind
cool
of print
stuff.
on it, which is kind of like let's see, Monster Fight Club. That's kind of what they did for their Cyberpunk City terrain too, was the
Sure. Yeah.
pre-printed walls. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, these walls are basically just single color, whereas the
Right.
stuff that Monster Fight Club is like yeah, it's got like graffiti and all kinds of cool stuff on it. But these are
Yeah.
still just like they take these colors of these MDF and they spray it, and then now like it's different colors and stuff like that. But then you put it all
Very cool.
together, and then you don't really have to paint it. But I'm still going to go in and I'm going to probably do some airbrushing to it to kind of grunge it up and stuff like
Mm.
that. But anyway, yeah. So I wanted the Zona Alpha stuff to kind of have that feel to it, and so I thought that kit bashing these ghouls and giving them some like modern day stuff to like kind of just like helmets and things like that. I think I'm going to try to find like a boot like from some other figure, some like a pair of legs, and then just like cut the boot off and then cut off the
Oh,
leg and then
sure.
glue them together so it looks like he's wearing one boot and he's got one boot missing. I'm going to try
Nice.
doing that too. So yeah. Um, Otherwise, as far as terrain is concerned, like I said, those brick walls, I'm kind of working on building those. They go together pretty quick, but because it's laser cut MDF, the edges are all like burned. And so you get
Oh, yeah,
like,
yeah.
I don't want to say ash, but you do get like soot sort of on your hands when you're
Mhm.
putting them together. And then I kind of go and I just take a little emery board to the edges to sort of sand them a little bit. But right now I'm working on a little bit slowly some 3D printed filament, Tatooine stuff for Star Wars Legion. That
Mhm.
stuff has now been textured and primed, and now I'm slowly starting to paint some details like the doors and stuff like that. The priming that I did was basically all kind of sand colored spray paint back before the snow flew, and so they're kind of ready to go there. But
Mhm.
the doors and window sills and all those parts are going to need to be slightly different colors, so I'm kind of working on those. And then the other thing I worked on a good portion this last weekend was I've got these 2 Games Workshop Realm of Battle boards, which are basically big 2 foot by 2 foot molded plastic like floors for you to play. You set your rest of your terrain and stuff on top of it, and it's already got like sewer grates and sidewalks and
Ah,
all that kind
okay.
of junk built into it. But it's gray plastic, so you got to paint it. And so the kit that you buy makes big enough to do a 4 foot by 6 foot table because it is 6 2x2s.
Mm.
I only did 2 2x2s because I don't see myself using all of them right away, but I could definitely see using 2 of them for like kill team or even just for photography when I'm shooting pictures of the models and stuff like that. So they got
Sure.
something nice to stand on.
That's cool.
So that's in process, and that's using a lot of craft paints and like big brushes like from the craft store. It's like you wouldn't want to paint that stuff with your like normal a miniature paints because you need like a lot of it. So it's
Yeah.
cheap acrylics from like the craft store and stuff like
And
that.
you'd be there all day.
Right, exactly. That's the other thing too. Like I can't even airbrush this because it's so big. I can barely fit it like on my airbrush table.
Oh my
The only
gosh,
thing
yeah.
is if if I could find the right size cardboard box, I could set that cardboard box on top of I have one of those spinners that you decorate cakes with.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
talking about?
Mhm.
And that's what I
Yep.
put my models on so I can spin them around when I'm airbrushing a little bit
Yep.
if I need to
Yeah,
like,
my booth came with one like that. I love
Sure.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I actually just got one like that's actually designed for cakes, but it
Mhm.
works. But I would need to raise that 2 foot by 2 foot square up higher so that it doesn't bump on like stuff that's on the table that I have there.
Hmm.
So I would have to find a cardboard box that would be just the right size so I could do that. And then that would help me at least be able to get in there to do some varnishing and stuff. But I don't know. I might just end up using rattle can varnish. I'm not sure yet. So yeah, and then I'm slowly still on and off when I'm like waiting for things to dry. I'm still chipping away at this Ogroid Myrmidon from Warcry, who's the kind of the sort of what's no, I can't think of the name. He's like a bull
A
that
Minotaur.
yeah, Minotaur, like Myrmidon, and then yeah, Minotaur, yeah. And he, I don't know, just been painting on him slowly here and there, and just working on some slow progress. But it's good to have just sometimes like, oh, I'll just have this thing that I'll work on when everything else is either annoying me or drying. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
yeah.
Very
So
cool.
that's pretty much what I've been doing since the last episode, and we've got. I one thing I'm looking forward to, honestly, is that I'm going to eventually, because of backing the Kickstarter, I'm going to get a set of the Empire Falls stuff. But I bid, not bid, whatever you pledged, I guess, for Kickstarters, right?
Yeah.
I pledged at the pre-paint it for me level, actually. So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That was cool
yeah,
that that was available. Yeah.
yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm looking forward to getting this stuff and then not having to sit down and paint it. And not that I don't like painting, but there's sometimes it's just really nice to get like, hey, this is all ready to go. You know what I mean?
Right.
So yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. So our friends at Get Us Gaming want to thank their supporters for bringing their latest Kickstarter campaign, Empire Falls, to life. If you missed the Kickstarter or you want to add to your pledge, a pledge manager will be coming soon. So if you missed the time, you could get in there and still potentially even maybe buy the pre-painted set if you want to, or buy the set that you want to paint yourself. And as an added thank you to all of our listeners, you can now get 10% off your entire purchase of World War I and World War II miniatures at Gaddis Gaming's website when you use the promo code GAME4. That is GAME and the number 4, all one word. Find out more by going to Gaddis Gaming. That is GADDISGAMING.com. We will also have a link in our show notes. And thank you to Gaddis Gaming for sponsoring the GameFor podcast.
Yes, thank you.
So today's topic for the podcast is something about guilty pleasures.
Hmm.
As it relates to tabletop gaming, there are all kinds
Right.
of guilty pleasures
Absolutely.
in life to some degree, but we're talking about how it relates to tabletop gaming, and like what exactly is a guilty pleasure when it
Right.
comes to
So
tabletop gaming.
yeah, so it's kind of that thing that's just kind of a something you like doing that maybe you wouldn't share with your friends or you wouldn't, go boast about it. Like you're not gonna go post on Facebook, like say like Flappy Bird. Like when before
Sure.
Flappy Bird was cool, or maybe like what's that? There was that game with Mall Madness. Like as a kid, like that you
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
y- yeah, like I probably wouldn't have bragged to my friends that I liked Mall Madness back in the time, but it was kind of a fun game to play. If somebody
Sure.
was
It'd be like coming to school in the on Monday morning. You'd be like, hey, we played Sorry all weekend and it was awesome, and like everybody
right.
else would be like, no, that's not awesome, and you'd be like, well, I enjoy it. It's
Oh, sorry.
generally
Yep, yep. That was another one
yeah.
I did on my for my list. Yeah,
Oh really? No kidding. Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
I kind of hated that game when I was a kid. it
Uh,
was not for me, but
yeah,
gen-
it was. I always win at it for some reason, so I
oh
always
well,
get
that's a
the
benefit, I guess.
lucky card pulls and
Yeah, yeah. Like generally something that is a guilty pleasure, and as it relates to specifically tabletop games, generally games that one enjoys, despite understanding that for the most people it is not generally held in high regard, I
right,
guess
and
is the right
it
term.
might not even in high regard for yourself. Like man, like your example is sorry. Like it can get really boring when you get because you have to get like I think it was like a one and or a two to like get out of your start location. Like
Hmm.
depending on the shuffle, like you could just be sitting there drawing cards between each other for like 5 minutes with nothing going on.
Oh
Like there
yeah,
was
sure.
definitely some issues with that game, but
Yeah, no, yeah, yeah. But boy, did they sell a whole bunch of them. It was
oh yeah,
crazy. And like there's no theme. You know what I mean? That's the thing that always drove me the crazy about
Yeah,
Sorry
there
is that
really
like,
is.
Monopoly's got a theme. You're like buying up, real
Yeah,
estate and
life
all that kind of
and
stuff and
guess
making
who, and
money.
yeah,
Yeah, life and all these other games. But and admittedly there are games without a theme like, things like Othello or Go and stuff like that, but those are more like I think almost mind puzzles. This was
right.
like a
Strategy games,
board
yeah.
game where they were just like, we just didn't come up with a theme. Like I feel
Sorry,
like
we
they
didn't do that either.
Exactly. That was the joke I was going to make. I felt like they were going to take it, like they took it to like Parker Brothers or whoever, and they're like, "Oh, we worked on this game, but we don't have any kind of thing for it. You don't have like a hook or nothing. Sorry." And they were just like, "Yeah, ship it, whatever. Just call it Sorry.
Whatever.
It'll be fine." Yeah. So it's just yeah. Anyway, so there are plenty, and this is not just guilty pleasures. Is obviously not just a thing in tabletop gaming. That's what we're focusing on here. But there's
Mhm.
guilty pleasures in music, movies, TV, all kinds of different things, any kind of media
Absolutely.
to some degree where people are like, like, especially if you're kind of, I don't want to say snobby, but like if you're kind of a music snob, let's say, and then you admit to somebody also that you really do like, I don't know,
Backstreet
Ace of
Boys.
Backstreet Boys or Ace of Base or
Ace of Base is a
Taylor
good one, yeah.
Swift or something like that. Like it's just a
Something very
really good
mainstream,
song. And
yeah.
you're like, yeah, I mean, but yeah, it can be like that, and there are plenty of folks obviously out there that are playing, more indie tabletop games and they have definite specific ideas about what makes a good tabletop game and how a lot of mainstream stuff maybe isn't good. But, that doesn't mean that there aren't, people out there specifically who maybe like indie stuff who also do sometimes like the guilty pleasures or the trash. I mean, there's a whole line of there's a whole like specific group of types of board games that are referred to as Eurotrash. You know what I mean, right? Or is it
Right.
Ameritrash? Is it
Uh,
Eurotrash or Ameritrash?
Ameritrash
Ameritrash, right?
and Euro games, yeah.
Right. No, yeah, Eurotrash is a totally different thing altogether. That has nothing to do with games. That's just a term that people throw around or used to throw around, and it was not very nice. But
And
as
if you
far
got
Ameritrash is
if you're upset with
a
Adam
game
and like to
reference.
contact us at
Yeah,
podcast.
no, I wouldn't say that. But I heard the word, and not being a board gamer, I'm like, I know there's Euro games and there's Ameritrash, and I just kind of put them together. But yeah, a lot of times, that's the reason that you play these kind of guilty pleasures is because you like to use. I mean, it's just a situation of it's not a lot of thought sometimes, especially if you've been
Mhm.
doing it a lot. If it's a game you've played for years and years, like the
Mhm.
fact that just now you were able to pretty much pull out some of the rules from Sorry, I
Right.
will be honest, sort of surprised me. I remember the only part I remember the game is there was that bit where you kind of slid down that one part on the board. If
Yep.
you landed here, then you slid past. That's literally that, and I can picture the logo, and
Yeah.
also the fact that I was
Oh
not a
yeah.
big fan.
I haven't played in. Well, I did play a bit with like I think my oldest kid when he was young. But yeah, I
Okay.
remember a lot of that stuff. Like the 7, I think could be split up. You could use that on 2 different pieces.
Okay.
So like
See.
a 6 and a 1, a 2 and a 5, 3 and a 4. 11, 11 or 10. You could instead of going forward that amount, you could go backwards one.
Mm-hmm. But when you started talking about how you couldn't start moving until you got like a
Yeah,
1 or a 2, all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. Just
that
sitting
was
there
the
with your,
worst part of the game.
it just like, come on, yeah. Oh, I know. But generally, the upside to playing kind of
Hmm.
guilty pleasure games is that they're frequently kind of easy. Sometimes they're low impact. I mean, especially again, like I said, if you've been playing it enough, you kind of just know it like the back of your hand.
Hmm.
And they can kind of help elevate your mood sometimes, kind of like like comfort foods, when you're just like, I just want mac and cheese. I don't want anything fancy or
Right.
challenging. I
Yeah.
just want to eat, I don't know, mashed potatoes and gravy or something. I mean, there's different
Like
comfort
yeah.
foods out there. Yeah.
Right. Like
Peanut
if
butter and
it'd be
jelly.
like like Gordon Ramsay, I'm sure sometimes just makes a peanut butter and jelly sandwich.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it might still be a way better peanut butter and jelly sandwich than I would ever have. But for him, you might be like, well, that's just a comfort food for me.
Right.
It's kind of
Exactly.
like
Exactly.
Ratatouille. The whole premise of Ratatouille was that the
Hmm.
food critic liked Ratatouille, which was considered kind of a peasant meal.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, my wife just made that a couple of times in the last month or so. It's really good.
Nice. I don't know if I've
Yeah.
ever
Yeah.
had it.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's basically predominantly all vegetables, which is I mean, I don't know if there's any meat in it that I can think of, but it's
Yeah.
still got a very I think I don't know. I liked it a lot. I had never had it before either, so yeah.
Hmm.
But there was no rat in our kitchen who was. I saw her doing it, and she was not wearing a hat, so I know that it was
Oh.
her. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's good. I think that's good. I think the downside sometimes to playing guilty pleasure games is that I mean, you're not expanding your horizons a little bit, maybe, if you stick
Yeah.
with like, I just love, and like people like Settlers of Catan is relatively still to this day well regarded. But like if that's just the thing that you just play all the time, then it can become like that. It's like
Mhm.
if it's almost like a fallback in some situations. Not normally. Like the term guilty pleasures doesn't just mean the thing that you play all the time, because you might play some totally super indie crazy game that very few other people, play, but it's highly regarded critically or whatever, and along those lines.
Right.
And that might be the only game that you're playing, and you're like literally stuck on it. But that doesn't make it a guilty pleasure. But when you're just only kind of playing your guilty pleasures, it does cause you to not try new things to some degree.
Right.
Um, and you're not learning new types of games as well, and that kind of stuff. And I think that probably if you're kind of sticking with a specific guilty pleasure, if you keep playing it, you could potentially burn out on that title. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
I can see that where you almost feel like you might go, "Oh, yeah, I don't feel like playing board games." Well, it's because you've only played, the ones that you're like, "Yeah, I know these aren't that great, but that's all I feel like
Right.
playing." And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally understand that. But yeah, so I think that, there's nothing, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with playing these types of games, certainly. I think, like I said, it is a situation of if it's all you ever play, then maybe, you might want to look at trying to spread out a little bit, but it's not a necessity, certainly.
Mhm.
Um, I've got a bit of a list, and you've got a list. You want to alternate back and forth, maybe, and we'll talk about some of
Yeah.
our
Yeah, because
guilty
I think
pleasures.
we're probably pretty familiar with each other's list as well. So yeah,
Sure, yeah.
let's
Why
go
don't,
with it.
why don't you start? Because I think you have more than me.
Okay. So the first one that came to mind when I thought about this category was
Hmm.
the game sequence.
Okay.
So the game sequence, if you don't remember, is one. It's kind of got this giant board that with all faces of different playing cards, like your normal 52 cards,
Hmm.
and you're trying to connect, I believe, 5 in a row, and you basically take turns laying down cards, and there's like I think 2 or 3 spots for each card. So like if you have the ace of clubs, there's like 2 or 3 places you can play that, and you're trying to get in a row and block the other person or team to do that.
Hmm.
um Not a great thinker game. There's a lot of luck involved. But I think the reason why this kind of bumped into my list was that when I was first dating my wife, and I've met her family. Like I met her parents, I think, earlier, but when I met the rest of her family for, I think it was like Thanksgiving or Easter, probably
Hmm.
Easter was like the first gathering. They apparently were all just big fans of the game, so they got me into playing it. I hadn't played it probably maybe more than a couple times in my life when I was a kid.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think that's why I still like the game, is that it's kind of it was a lot of fun back then, but there's a lot of nostalgia that's now built into that.
Oh yeah,
Um,
no, absolutely.
so you know, it's easy, it's fun, easy to teach the kids, but yet there's just enough strategy that for most people are okay playing it. So yeah, that's kind of my first go to guilty pleasure sequence.
Hmm. Okay. I would say probably, and this is going to sound a little weird. Mine is probably going to be, and I was mentioning it a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Warhammer 40,000 Kill Team. And
Yeah, I was like, "What? How is that a guilty pleasure?" But yeah, explain what you explained to me, because that kind of said it for me. That I was like, "Okay, yeah, that's on the list. I'll put
well,
that
I,
there."
I think that like it sold relatively well when it
Mhm,
first kind of was. Well, I want to say re-released because Kill Team's been around in 40K for quite some time, but it's never been. It's always been like an add-on. It's always
mhm,
been like you need to have the 40K rule book and you need to have a codex, and then there's this extra little thing, and then you can kind of play 40K differently with fewer models. And then in 2018, they released the game as a completely separate, self-contained game. So it was using 40K, Warhammer 40K models, and it was using, terrain that was similar or basically the same and stuff like that. But you bought a single book that had the rules in it and also had all of the army lists that you would need, and it was all
mhm.
self-contained, and it was kind of cool that way. And it sold pretty well for a while. And I think now, as it's been almost 3 years later now, I keep hearing from people, and in my on my YouTube chats and in Twitch chat and stuff like
Mhm.
that. I'm seeing a lot of people, and in YouTube comments as well, in the videos that I do, people saying that they're starting to dislike the rules set because they think that the rule set is too much like regular Warhammer, and it seems I don't want to say shoehorned in, but like I think the thing that maybe shot Games Workshop in the foot a little bit is that they also released a game last year called Warcry,
Mm-hmm.
and Warcry is a small skirmish kind of small scale skirmish style game in the style of their fantasy game, which is called
Right.
Age of Sigmar. But 40K is, or I'm sorry, Kill Team is very much like 40K. Warcry
Right.
is much more streamlined than Age of Sigmar. It's a very different game. They are not
Mm-hmm.
just like slightly different versions of each other. And I think because of that, people are starting to look at Warcry or Kill Team and saying, geez, this should be more streamlined. It's a little kludgy. And so I'm seeing more and more people complaining about
Yeah.
the rules and talking about it, but I still really love it. Like, I think it's a great
Mm-hmm.
game. And it's not just because
Yeah.
it's skirmish, but I still really like the way the rules are done. And I like the fact, like, I feel bad if they decide to try to like streamline it a whole bunch. I like Warcry just fine, but I kind of want this one to stay the way it is a little bit, although I doubt that will happen. I'm not sure exactly what will happen, but something will. And so because of that, like I'm always like, people are like, hey, let's play. I'm like, yeah, let's play Kill Team. And they're like, and this is back when you can still, play with people in
Right.
person. And it was a lot of like, I don't know, man. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's fun. You really should, and so to some degree, I think that feels to be a bit of a guilty pleasure. I mean, that game also being part of just Games Workshop, that means it's at least within our small little niche of a hobby,
Right.
within the smaller niche of the hobby as well. It's kind of mainstream, so it's a little bit of a top 40 popular music sort of thing that some people are. I'm seeing more and more people who are like, "Oh, I just don't like the rule set," and I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, I still kind of do." So,
And I could see that, yeah, like because like playing like Warhammer Underworlds, which was built for
hmm
skirmish, compared to
hmm
like Kill Team, you could definitely see that it wasn't really full out made to be skirmishy. It still was kind of more of a teaser to get you into it. There's still
oh
some
yeah,
places where yeah, the game can get kind of slow and
hmm
stuff like that. But yeah, I
and it is
like you said, I
because
do like it. I do like it, but
yeah,
yeah, I could totally understand the complaints about it.
it's got some it's like it's to some degree it's almost a bit of a primer for 40K as far as like
Hmm.
learning the overall stat lines, like learning strength and toughness and how they react, and your armor penetration and blah blah and all that kind of stuff, and that stuff's all in there just like it is in regular 40K, being basically their big flagship over their Games Workshop. But
Hmm.
yeah, I don't know, I still think it's a lot of fun, and I really do enjoy it, and I guess that's my first guilty pleasure, I would say then.
Nice. Yeah. Like I said,
Mhm.
as soon as you explained it, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I totally give you that on. All right. So the next one on my list is Monopoly. And I will say that this only entered my guilty pleasures after I kind of like relearned the actual rules of Monopoly about like the whole like you never put money on free parking and all a bunch of other stuff that makes the game that lasts like 3 or 4 hours and makes you want to pull my eyes out at that point.
Mhm, mhm.
The actual like if you're playing directly by the rules, um it's actually a lot quicker than that, and the game ends a lot faster, and there seems to be more strategy and more trading and more interactions versus just kind of a roll and move type thing.
Right.
So I would say, yeah, Monopoly is kind of it just made the list for me. And it's really dependent on as long as I can have the people not play with house rules when I'm playing it.
Sure, yeah. What about, like, special versions of Monopoly, like Walking Dead Monopoly, or,
Yeah, I just bought my brother for Christmas because he was on our gift exchange. That was who I got. He got the
Mhm.
Elf Monopoly.
Elf?
Because he's a
Oh,
big
the movie.
yeah, he's a big
Mhm,
fan of the movie Elf, and it
mhm.
just came out right before Christmas, so it was good timing. And then my mom got me the like a Wisconsin brewery Monopoly version, which is
Oh,
all
wow.
like different breweries or something. Like I don't see really a lot of difference in all those. Like I know that they have little tweaks here and there, but hey, it's still
But they don't do
Monopoly. So
much in the way of tweaks, yeah?
yeah, it wouldn't make me go like, "Oh, this is fantastic," or "This is horrible." It would just would be like, "Okay, it's just a different theme, but it's the same game for the most part."
Sure,
So,
sure.
So, I would be fine playing them, and that would probably still let me like the Star Wars Monopoly or something like that would help me with the you know wanting to play it and try it out. But
Keeping the interest, I think. Yeah. I mean, that's kind
yeah,
of the benefit to doing those types of games and making them licensed and stuff like that is that at least, but I mean, if it's just an absolute one-to-one recreation of normal Monopoly, they've just swapped out all the names with Star Wars dudes or whatever, I mean, that
right.
can be problematic, but you'd also don't want to modify it too much and make it like a totally different game. So I can understand that. I
Hmm.
don't think I've ever played any of those licensed. No, I take that back. I played a licensed Monopoly once, but again, it was like not for like Wisconsin breweries, but it was like just the exact same Monopoly. It's just all the businesses and stuff like that were like local businesses. They used to do that a
Yeah,
lot back in the like 80s and stuff.
right.
Yeah, no, I think I did play one of those once when I was a kid. Because we had one for like the town we lived in. Yeah, no, that's cool. I would say that probably my next one is, and this one's also going to sound a little weird in my opinion, but it's Star Wars X-wing, which
Hmm.
is still a very very popular game out there, and people do like it. Uh, and so it's still kind of highly regarded. The thing is that I really prefer the first edition. So start what a lot of people call 1.0. The new version of Star Wars X-wing came out, I don't know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and it's what they
Yeah.
call 2.0, and I've just never upgraded to the new version. I've always, me and like basically one other friend, we still get together and play from time to time, although we haven't obviously in 2020 because of COVID. But we would still get together and play, even though the new version was out. We just always preferred the older version, and just from everything that I
Hmm.
had read about the changes and stuff like that. Like I will admit, I did not spend all the money to upgrade my entire collection to 2.0.
Right.
Um, so there was that. But after reading a lot about it and everything like that, both of us just kind of were like, nah, we're just going to keep playing the old version. We think it's good because, admittedly, we were not playing competitively. Like we would play against each other for fun. We were not out there playing competitively. And evidently, in the competitive scene, the move from 1.0 to 2.0 in Star Wars X-Wing was very necessary.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's great. But I personally just kind of was like, well, I like, we both like this and we already have all this stuff. And so we can just continue to play it. Now, the problem is obviously if someone comes along to the shop and is like, hey, I'll play one of you guys. And you'd be like, well, we're playing the old version. And they'd be like, well, you're crazy. And we'd say, yeah, that's true. And it's fine. But yeah, that's the kind of the other kind of guilty pleasure. I still do enjoy playing the old version of Star Wars X-wing, and I'm totally okay with it, and so is the friend that I play with. So,
Perfect.
what you got next?
All right. So next on my list, I'm gonna actually change to there's some last minute editing going on.
Oh yeah, okay.
Um, is going to be the Harry Potter game. I believe it's Secret of Hogwarts
The Secret of Hogwarts.
or
Is it a
Hogwarts Mystery.
board game? I
It's
know
a
there was
board
also a
game.
miniatures game too.
Yeah, but this is the board game slash like deck builder game.
Okay, all right.
Um, yeah, definitely not like one that you would be like, I'm gonna go to work and be like, guys, I just played Harry Potter last night. It was absolutely amazing.
Right.
Definitely was probably aimed towards more of the family, younger kids crowd, but it's a heavy game overall. Like it's got some depth to it, and it's a lot of fun. It
Mm-hmm.
really is. I
Mm-hmm.
like it. I think it's well done. The artwork is good. There's just enough references to books slash movies to make it. The theme was done well, and yeah, I really like it.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever played that. I mean, I guess that's not that big of a surprise. I'm not a huge board gamer, but I don't think I've ever played that one. The I think that, and this is going to be slightly interesting. I think another guilty pleasure for me is probably Munchkin by Steve Jackson Games.
Mm,
Um, Now Munchkin is at least monetarily wildly popular. But if you talk to people who are pretty serious about board games, I think a lot of them are not particularly interested in sitting down and playing a game of Munchkin. And I will be
right.
honest, they've made so many add-ons and licensed, this and that. I am maybe not necessarily particularly interested in sitting down and playing many of those, if any. But the original, like just base version Munchkin, that and some of maybe the earliest add-ons, like Star Munchkin and stuff like that.
Hmm.
those are fun. But if I can just sit down with the right group of people and just play regular old bog standard Munchkin,
Right.
it's actually a very fun game. It was
Yes.
in my opinion, the thing that has maybe pushed that game way over the top and made it to be a little bit more of a guilty pleasure, as opposed to just a straight up good game, is the fact that there have been, I don't know, 500 add-ons for it or something like that. I mean, like
Yeah.
the
Well, and
yeah.
there's like what Warhammer one, like Doctor
Oh
Who
yeah.
Munchkin. There's so many. They almost rival Monopoly in the amount of different versions there have been.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, like I've seen there's a Conan the Barbarian Munchkin. There's like nearly any kind of like Walking
Property.
Dead Munchkin, any property you can think of. Nearly, they've probably made a version of Munchkin for it. So that's kind of I mean, it's fine. It is what it is, and they like to make money. I get that, but personally, I still find the original base version of the game still a lot of fun. And there's a bunch
Hmm.
of jokes in there that to me are still funny.
Oh yeah, the
And things
wordplay
like that.
puns and stuff is just fantastic. That's what
Yeah,
made me really like fall in love with it. It
yeah.
totally reminded me of like like the Discworld and Douglas Adams like level of humor.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think as the base game was, I think, pretty brilliant, and my only personal complaint is just that there's so many add-ons. Now, admittedly, you don't obviously have to buy them. Like, it's not like the game can't be played without them.
Right.
It's just like you go into any local game store and you look at the Munchkin shelf, and it will just be so many things. You're like, ugh, I mean, it's just, the people who like that very specific property, they're like, oh, there's a Munchkin version for this. Great, I'm going to buy it because they're going to get all the inside jokes and stuff like that. And that's the whole point. I understand that that's the
Right.
business model, but it's almost become a little bit of an overbearance to some degree in the industry. But yet, like I said, I still think the base game is still a fun time.
Hmm. Yep.
What else have you
Totally
got?
with you. All right, so this one I'm kind of grouping like three games together, but they're
Ooh,
pretty
saucy.
much, yeah, they're pretty much like they're almost like the mid '90s, early 2000s like party games go tos,
Mm-hmm.
and they're basically so categories,
Okay.
Apples
Yep.
to Apples, which was probably the later of all three of these, and then Trivial Pursuit.
Yeah. Trivial
Um,
Pursuit was definitely 80s. My
right, that
mom used
was
to play the
'80s.
heck out of that.
Yeah, now one I even got like I think there was like one that was like back to the '80s version of Trivial Pursuit, so it had like a lot of
Mm.
like '80s pop culture and stuff going into it.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
yeah, not like in depth games, but I don't know. I always liked them. I always had fun with them. Um, stuff that I still, if somebody was like, "Oh, let's play these," I probably would still be like, "Yep, let's play it." I wouldn't even
Yeah.
question it. But yeah, I probably wouldn't bring it to my weekly board game group as a game. To
Like I
be like,
remember, well, yeah, no, probably not. That's true. I can understand that. Categories in my mind was always, at least categories like was subjective
mm-hmm.
or no,
Well,
objective. It was
ob-
objective.
objective.
Yeah, apples to apples was subjective to me always, and that sort of drove me nuts because basically the
Yeah,
person whose turn it was chose what was the best thing. Kind of the same thing with I mean,
Cards Against Humanity.
Cards Against Humanity is basically just apples to apples, but with swears. You know what I mean? I've been saying that
Right,
for years, and that's whatever. It is what it is, and that's a fun party game to some degree. But there's times when you're like, "Well, this is obviously the best. The one that I laid down is obviously the best answer," and then
right.
the person picks somebody else's, and you're like, "Well, that's not."
Yeah, that could definitely make
You
you
know,
salty. But at the same time, like
right? Yeah, yeah.
very little times do you have like those games and not have at least one or two like good, like the whole table is just cracking up.
Sure, yeah, that's true. But like categories, at least there are like you could definitely say yes, this was the right answer, or no, this wasn't the right answer, and it's all about points. If I remember correctly.
Right. Yeah, and then there
Yeah,
was
yeah.
like points for for alliteration too. So like if the letter
Yeah,
was L
absolutely.
and like it was like sports, you could be like Little League, and
You're
then I
right.
get
Yeah,
2
exactly.
points. Yeah.
hmm And so yeah, I played categories and stuff like family things, and I enjoyed that more so than I've ever enjoyed apples to apples personally. But I do know I can see how it is a fun kind of like party thing.
Yeah.
And Trivial Pursuit, I mean, obviously there's a right answer or not, and
Hmm.
that works. But it's yeah. Then my mom, I have this very very vivid memory. 1984, by the way, coming
Okay.
home from so that summer 1984 was, I believe, the Los Angeles Olympics, the Summer Olympics in Los
Yep, that would
Angeles.
have been Summer Olympics. Yep.
Yep. And McDonald's had this special thing where you could go in and no purchase necessary. They would give you a scratch off card. And if you scratched off the big main medal on the card, if the Americans got gold in that particular event,
Oh
then
yeah,
you would
yeah.
get a free Big Mac. And if it was like silver, you got like a soda and something else. Bronze, you got fries. And then there were 3 scratch offs on the bottom. And if all 3 of those matched, you could also get something else. And my friend Ricky and I would ride our bikes over to McDonald's kind of late in the evening and get those scratch offs. And that year the Soviets didn't come to the Olympics. They like boycotted the Olympics, so US was winning like tons and tons and tons of stuff, so we could just go in, ask for 2 scratch offs, and walk out with sandwiches and fries and all kinds of stuff like that. And then I would ride home from his house, and this is the summer. I would ride home and park my bike in the garage, and I'd be walking through the backyard, and I would see my mom and 2 to 3 of the other neighbor people, like women predominantly in the area, all sitting and playing the Trivial Pursuit, like nearly every single night.
Mm-hmm.
Like walking from the garage to the house, looking in the back window, and seeing them, playing Trivial Pursuit. And my mom would be, frankly, just schooling them. She was very, very good at trivia.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have very strong memories about that game, and that is, I would say, probably, for me specifically, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That would be a good guilty pleasure.
Yeah, Trivial Pursuit was kind of the game that when the first time I was allowed to play it, I felt very grown up playing it. Ooh,
Yeah.
now it's like getting moved to the adult table was when you were allowed to start playing Trivial Pursuit with everybody.
Well, right. There's like no chutes nor ladders, or any of that kind of
Right.
stuff. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that is kind of nice. Let's see. What my last one on the list is only vaguely kind of I guess what's the term, like related, I guess, to my previous one. So
Mm.
Munchkin was a game from Steve Jackson Games, and then there's another game also made by Steve Jackson Games that was a guilty pleasure of mine and might be again soon, but I think it's going to be a bit different. And it's called Car Wars. Pretty much what it says on the tin. It is a game about driving cars around and shooting each other. And it was a game that my friends and I played in college nearly every Friday night.
Mm.
One of my friends lived in one of the dorms, and we would go down into one of the like in the basement. They had like a rec room and stuff like that, and we would go down to there and commandeer a table or two and sit down and play Car Wars on Friday nights. And it was very nerdy, because the cars were just little tiny cardboard chips that you'd be moving around on this grid, and you had to track your speed, and there were like 10 different movement phases in every turn, and it was just all this stuff, but we just loved it. And it was just kind of crazy stuff. And nowadays, like, that game is way, 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 way in need of some streamlining, and that's another one of those reasons why it's still something that a lot of people probably are not super interested in these days. So therefore it's
Mhm.
probably not, but I still do like it quite a bit. Now, that being said, Steve Jackson Games has made a new version. They did a successful Kickstarter, and it will hopefully come out sometime maybe this year. We'll see. They're running a little bit behind, and I understand that with COVID, that's obviously very difficult.
Right.
But yeah, this is the second time I've done a Kickstarter for Steve Jackson, and both times they've been way behind. But the game is very different now than it was. It's much more streamlined. Honestly, there's parts of it that remind me of Star Wars X-Wing, because you've got plastic cars now on there, and it's like you've got those kind of movement, sort of like cardboard rulers to kind of move you around. You're not having to worry about being on a grid board, and you have little kind of cardboard like not dials like they do in X-Wing, but they have like a dashboard, for lack of a better term, that you keep track of your speed there, and how much tire damage you have, and this and that and the other thing, and all your weapons. And so it's much less. I have an 8.5 by 11 sheet that has all of my information for my car on it, and it's more about, I have cards and a cardboard counter and this and that and everything to track all my current status, and stuff. And so that's cool. But yeah, we'll see when it actually eventually hopefully comes out. But that was kind of a nostalgic thing. I'm like, all right, I was like literally not going to buy it. I was not going to do the Kickstarter until the last couple of days when one of my friends that I used to play in college with reached out to me and he's like, "Hey, you know they got this Kickstarter, right?" And I'm like, "Yes, I know that they got the Kickstarter." And he's like, "Yeah, I totally got into it." And I'm like, "Ah," and so I did that too. But that was, geez, when was that? 2018? I don't even remember now. It's been a while.
Yeah.
I went down. No, I think maybe it was in
Um,
2019. Yeah,
it
because
might
I
have been.
went to Austin. Actually, I went to Steve Jackson's first ever, after 35 years of being in business or 40 years of being in business. I went to their first ever convention in Austin back in 2019. And the main reason I went was because I had some friends who lived in Austin. And I wanted to see them, but I also went to play. They were basically playing a beta test version of the new Car Wars, and I wanted to try it out. So, um, yeah. So that's, I guess, my last guilty pleasure. If you got another
Nice.
one?
Yeah, I've got one that's more recent on the list, but it's went way up on my list. And it is Power Rangers Heroes of the Grid.
Okay.
Now growing up, I missed the Power Rangers like era. Like that was my
Mm,
my younger brother and sister. They were sort of watching a little bit of Power Rangers. I just never did. That was kind of like
mhm.
that for me. That was like a kid thing. I wasn't into it. But yeah, we ended up playing because we were doing the website for it, and
Oh, yeah, yeah.
we wanted to learn, well, what the game was all about. So I was my expectations were on the ground for the game. I was like, oh, I just hope I can like get through a game and not just completely despise this thing. It's
Well,
got some
because
cool
it's a
miniatures.
yeah, but it's a thing that you're not necessarily like. Again, you didn't watch the show, and but
Yeah,
and you were like, oh, it's a kids show or whatever, you know.
right. I was like, I'm totally not into it. And oh my gosh, it is just a fantastic game. I
It's
absolutely
kind of
like.
a tower defense game, sort of, isn't it?
Uh,
I mean, a little bit, not
I
exactly,
guess you
but
could.
because you're
Yeah, that might be a not a bad way to look at it. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Um. Yeah, that's
Because you're kind of
probably a
building
good.
up and you're kind of building up and then sort of waiting for the bad guys is sort of to some degree, right?
Right, you're trying to stomp out. You can't stomp out everyone at the same time, but you're trying not to get
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed and to where
Mm-hmm.
they basically kill you off. Yeah, that's probably
Yeah,
an apt description. I'm sure somebody else will have a better one, but yeah, that's
sure.
better than what can come up with. But yeah, it is a fun game. There's a ton of expansions for it, and from what I can tell, all of them are really well done as well.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've been every time like people are I've had like all of two people maybe come over that between COVID restrictions, and
Sure.
I've recommended it every time. My
Mm-hmm.
family's kind of sick of me asking to play it, but so it's become kind of my go-to, and it's definitely not something I would ever have thought would be in my wheelhouse for a game. But yeah, it's the gameplay won me over, and now I'm almost guilty that I didn't watch more Power Rangers to understand more of the game.
Well, sure, but I mean, the thing is that a game and the mechanics it's, I don't know, like it's they can definitely be separate things. You can come up with a cool
Absolutely.
mechanic thing and then be like, okay, we're just going to tack on some sort of thing. But sometimes it works better when the mechanics and the subject matter make more
Yeah, I think
sense.
right, and I think like sometimes they were able to. You could tell that the designer kind of like did like an ebb and flow where he
Hmm.
maybe had a mechanic and then tried tying it to the game, and by tying it to the game, he like made it actually work even better. And then
Yeah,
back and forth where like the game is better because it had to be tied to a theme, and then the theme got better because of the mechanics that it got driven to. And
yeah, yeah. No, absolutely. There's an actual name for that particular thing, and I can't off the top. It's a long kind of technical name for when the mechanics actually tie in and make sense with the
hmm
the theme, let's say. And I can't think of it off the top of my head, but it is it's kind of cool that way because again it's that game or that the story of those TV shows and all the
hmm
subsequent media that's come from there as well, comic books and such like that, is basically about a group of people fighting against some sort of big evil. And so this game is cooperative, basically, right?
right, yep,
And so, yeah, I mean, if it wasn't cooperative, that wouldn't make any sense. And you might have great mechanics, but you're like, but why are we fighting against each other? Aren't we all Power Rangers on the same
right,
team? And they'd be
right,
like, yeah, but well, the
exactly.
mechanics didn't, so that's not a good fit. So that kind of stuff makes a lot of sense. So yeah, and again, I mean, there are good games out there. that sometimes you end up really digging, even though maybe the subject doesn't make a ton of sense,
Right. Yeah. Or
either
you're
within
like,
the context of the game
yeah.
or something that you should like. You, me, and Jason, we had a ton of fun playing that game at that convention a couple
Oh,
years
Sparkle
ago.
Kitty.
Sparkle Kitty, right? Yeah, like here's just
Yeah.
3 frankly grown ass men sitting around playing Sparkle Kitty. I mean, we had cocktails. I'm not going to lie, but
No,
still,
but
it was a lot of fun. It was a cool game. It was a
yeah,
very fun
it
game.
was like, oh, this is fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, these things. That's the benefit. I think some of the that's some of the really cool things about tabletop gaming is that you can find these things. Yeah, there's times when you're like looking at something as the subject and being like, well, this is maybe not for me or whatever. But there could still very possibly be a very good game in there. And also, you could have times when this is a game that everybody's sick of, played to death, and it's just not well regarded anymore by the people who are who hold the reins of the board gaming, I don't want to say Illuminati because that doesn't sound like the right word, but you see what I'm saying. And they're like,
Right.
oh, no, this is not a good game. And you're like, yeah, but I still really dig it though. You know what I mean? And that's what the
Right.
guilty pleasure is all about. That's what it makes
Yes.
sense, So
Yep.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I think if you've got some guilty pleasures yourself, dear listener, you should definitely try to, like, either mention it in if you're watching this on YouTube, or shoot us an email, or send us a tweet or something like that. But yeah, there's a lot of different guilty pleasure games out there, and we'd like to hear yours as well.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the GameFor podcast. If you've got questions or comments, again, guilty pleasures, things like that to share, and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player, you just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can check out our website at www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.
Thanks.